Gonna go through this box bob, real short, really strong bob. I lean heavily on that razor, that looseness of the razor, leaning heavily on our visual eye, right? The one thing that's so beautiful about working with the razor is it forces us to understand hairdressing from a visual perspective, as opposed to a cookie cutter A plus B equals C. This feels difficult, like it feels like something might be a little tricky, right? But like I can tell you this, razor cutting is far easier and it's far more pretty and soft. I use it as much as I can. I'm a hairdresser that worked from DC, Washington DC mostly, so the humidity there doesn't allow for it certain times of the year, and then in certain times of the year we had like a really bad problem with static electricity. So if you're in an area where the weather's a little better, you might be able to use this a lot more often than we were able to use it. But the beautiful thing about the razor is very fast, very soft. You just put things where you want them and cut them, right? At first that feels a little more awkward, but I promise you with time, it will push your hairdressing to the next level and make you understand that like we're really not that far apart at the end of the day. Anyone in this industry, you can get really good. You can create your own style if you lean on your visual eye as opposed to following other people's haircuts. So the cool thing about what I'm showing you today is I did a bob, but if you soften off corners here and there or put a new bang on it or really like change the angle of your lines, you can manipulate it into a million different styles and a million different shapes, and the way you style it, the way their hair is naturally, their natural texture, all of these things are gonna come into play when you're behind the chair and you're trying to do something creative and beautiful for the guests. Follow along, I'll take you through this haircut. Big sections, lots of movement, lots of looseness. Enjoy the razor cutting. All right guys, I wet her down, got her ready. I prepped her with some style lotions, like a light spray gel. So doing a little bit of a box bob, I'm keeping the front out so I can kind of see. It's pretty visual for me, so it kind of allows me to figure out how square I want to keep that line as I go forward. So if I'm not worried about it and I'm going straight into a square bob, sometimes I'll just section the whole thing up. Doesn't really bother me too much one way or the other. It's personal choice, preference. So I'm just gonna hold that down, kind of visualize where I'm going, and I'm just gonna work that line pretty square to the side. Just moving that razor in, and then I'm just gonna visually kind of clean up anything. The whole point of cutting with a razor is kind of watching balance more than anything else. I don't want it to be perfect, otherwise I would go in with a pair of shears, and since I have a tendency to cut pretty clean, I have to be careful to not go back in and correct too much stuff while I'm cutting. I just know from years of cutting hair with a razor that when I go in here and do this, I can have a tendency to be a little too perfect and it'll be too heavy. So basically I'm just lifting right above the line so I don't just keep recutting the line, and we just keep giving ourselves a little softness, a little play. So right here at this point in the weight of, I can start to think about my weight manipulation of the exterior line. So I can lift up slightly, raising up for a little bit of elevation, and I can just kind of come in and take some weight out of that length if I want right then and there. Now notice I'm trying to be imperfect with that because I don't want to end up putting a secondary weight line inside of that shape. Kind of think about it as like texturizing shears. So I was just going to keep clunking down with texturizing shears and putting a secondary weight line inside of that. It kind of defeats the purpose of having any looseness. So just lifting up slightly and just softening through that. And I want to be careful right here, like you won't see me do it on the very end of that because that's that weight behind the ear. So I want to keep the strength right behind the ear. So I'm going to do just, if I do any weight out of the manipulation of the weight and the length, right to that corner, I'm going to stop where the hair might get a little fine, just to make sure that I stay as heavy as possible. So the texturizing will happen kind of right behind it. Now bringing this all the way through. And always going from the back forward. I kind of work towards the face from the center back out on both sides. Right? I'm going to be working this shape around really loose and soft. And then constantly watching what the texture is giving me. That's really important when you're cutting with a razor. It's kind of watching your shape. That's what I love about the razor, is it really forces you to lean so heavily on your eye. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times with hairdressing, we spend so much time following guides that we forget to look at the shape that we're creating. Just cutting out any weight where I don't want it. It's very visual. Just opening the face up around the front. If you're cutting this haircut on a mannequin, feel free to kind of change up each side, because you want to be able to see what two different things get you, right? No use using a mannequin and only getting one look. It really doesn't matter if it's perfect. You're just trying to work it and see what the cutting's giving you. We get so caught up in trying to be perfect that we sometimes forget that the way that it feels and styles and visually, the balance has to be visual, not necessarily perfect, right? Because if they part their hair on the left side or the right side, they might push more weight to one side or the other. And if you cut it perfect, it's still gonna be heavier visually on one side or the other. Doing a quick dry on this. What I love about the razor, it's going to help you develop your eye. It's a super important part of the process of developing and that path to mastery. Grab the razor. Once you get some sort of competence in your scissor cutting ability, you got to pick up that razor and really start to develop that eye. That's really important part of the process. I hope you guys have fun. Razor cutting is a blast. Enjoy it. Thanks.